Hi there. Thank you so much for listening to Grounded in Maine today. My name is Amy. My guest today is Susan Poizner, uh, who is the founder of Orchard People. She is also an author, podcast host, and educator. My goodness. And now she is also an arborist. So lots and lots of things. And she's got super fascinating past. So, Susan, thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to learn more about you and everything that you've learned.
Thank you so much, Amy. It's wonderful to be with you.
Yay! So, Orchard People. Okay, we've been talking for a little bit. So, Orchard People is basically educating people about fruit trees. That's your main thing, correct?
That's correct. My goal is to teach people how to care for fruit trees because 15 years ago or more, when I planted my first fruit trees in a public park as part of a community orchard, I thought it was going to be easy. And I stumbled into something that is very complicated. And so I had no idea. I felt I needed to eventually, after figuring out what to do. I didn't want anybody to be in the situation that I was in, where I had, in my situation, 18 fruit trees in a public park that could be a total disaster with pest disease, poor productivity, and those problems. Literally, Amy, I had no idea that it is tricky to grow fruit trees. I really thought it was going to be easy, but it can be easy. And I've learned over the years the tips and tricks that you need to do in order to keep your trees healthy. So I established my business, Orchard People, at orchardpeople.com to help educate people in how to care for their fruit trees.
Mm. I mean, I would have thought that fruit trees were easy as well. I mean, so many things. You dig a hole and you put some compost in, and then you put it in there, you mound it up, and everything's good, right?
Exactly. Hey, I agree with you. That's where I was at. And the funny thing is that at that time, I was a gardener for the city of Toronto. I did gardening in my own backyard. I was into organic gardening. And at the time, low water gardening was the thing, so sustainable. And so I thought, what could be more sustainable than fruit trees? We had a local park. It was empty, not really being used at all. It was not a very interesting place. And I thought, hey, let's plant some fruit trees there. Only to discover, first of all, that there were those in the community who wanted nothing to do with it. They were the ones who were saying, some of the neighbors said, oh, don't let her do this because fruit trees are messy
Oh my
and they'll get
goodness.
Oh, yes. Yes, there was a petition that 60 people, these three women, signed, knocked door to door to say, listen, this lady in our neighborhood is trying to put a fruit farm in our park. She should not be allowed.
Dare
And this
she?
is the things that could happen. There could be pests, there could be diseases, there could be animals, running around the park eating the fruit. There could be homeless people, whatever the problems that they imagined. But here's the irony, Amy. It's partly true. If I had planted those trees and neglected them, in other words, just, maybe watered them from time to time and sat around and waited for the harvest, it could have been a really bad scene. So because there was this opposition and because it was so visible, I had to commit to learning about how to care for these trees so that I could prove them wrong and show them that fruit trees are sustainable and that we can feed ourselves in our communities. And it became a model project, but it was an interesting learning curve.
My goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, that's very stressful. Like, you think you're doing something really good and then you get all this pushback. Like,
Yeah.
they really
Yeah.
don't want it.
No. And I remember at the time, my father was very surprised, and he's not a gardener, and he didn't know much about this stuff, but he said, who could be against fruit trees? Fruit trees are like motherhood and apple pie. But the interesting thing is, one of those women had, I guess, a son who had an orchard. And she realized that fruit trees can be tricky. So there, at the time when I wanted to learn, I would Google and I'm like, okay, I guess I need to take a course. I looked for an online course. is anybody teaching about fruit tree care? I found one course. It was in the United Kingdom. It was thousands of dollars or pounds, and it was for professional growers. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not growing
A backyard
10,000
grower,
trees.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
So,
a different like planting zone. I mean, it's pretty
oh,
similar, right?
well,
But
it's also temperate. The funny thing is that in the UK, they do use my books, my courses when I had them, and I write for all temperate climates. So the tools and systems would be the same. But either way, it was not within my budget and
yeah.
it would have been way too much. So, my background is a journalist, a writer, a broadcaster. And I thought, well, I guess maybe I'll have to teach it if I ever learn it. Yeah.
Wow. I what was the type of fruit tree? Was it one specific, like an apple or
We planted a whole variety of them. We have apples, cherries, apricots, plums, service berries, which are a native tree, and Asian pears. And we originally had European pears. That did not work out well for us. Yeah.
interesting? Oh, that sounds like heaven. I can't imagine like being grumpy about that.
I know it does sound like heaven. Here's the interesting thing. We did plant the trees. We did make mistakes, which I've talked about a lot in my books and stuff. But in the end, we actually brought so much life and community to the park. So a few years after it was established, we had a harvest day, and our trees were too young to harvest, but we had like celebrations and educational booths. And one of those people who opposed the whole plan came along on one of the orchard tours that I did. And she's standing there
Mm,
looking very serious as I'm giving the tour. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of like nerve
she's
wracking.
gonna do it to my face.
Yeah, no, what is she going to say? And at the end of the tour, she said, Susan, thank you very much. This was very nice.
And you fell on the ground.
I fell on the ground. And in the years after that, she has been amazing. Every time she sees us in the park working, she said, Susan, you guys are doing such a great job. Thank you. You've made the park so much better. So, but had I been the person that I could have been, with great ideas, there's a lot of people who have great ideas but just don't follow through, then it could have been not a good scene.
Or they're
And
intimidated by grumpy people.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, I guess I
Wow.
learned from that. So, yeah.
That's amazing. That what a story. My goodness. And I remember you had said in your guest form, one of the things that you said that if you give these fruit trees the care that they need, they'll reward you for years. And so, you planted all these fruit trees, they're all still growing. I mean,
They're all still growing. Over the years, we have had to remove and replace trees. That's part of our learning curve. And in my books and all my educational materials, I try to teach people how to not make the mistakes we made so you don't have to waste time buying trees and realize, whoops, that was the wrong tree. That's not an easy to grow one. There is some learning curve that is involved, but ultimately, with a little bit of advanced knowledge, you don't have to make those mistakes.
and the reward is so worth it.
And the reward is sweet. Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I love fruit and I love fruit trees. I think this is just so wonderful. And I'm just thinking of all the amazing life that you've brought to this park. I'm sure it was just like I mean, you said it was a very bland, like uninteresting park, and now there's like fruit and there's animals probably and people walking through
Yeah.
and
It's transformed the park. So at that same harvest festival where one of the people who did the petition was there and she went on the tour, I met somebody who signed the petition, and he's also a neighbor. And he came up to me, and the first thing he said, because loads of people flocked to the park to check out what was going on, and he said, Susan, this park looks so good with people in it.
and that's
And
the whole reason for a park, man.
that's the whole reason for a park, but it doesn't happen automatically just because you get a square of green space in a
Yeah.
city.
Don't just say go to the
There
park.
has to be something that draws people in. So these fruit trees have transformed the space for all of us. So we have had festivals and events. We have our cherry harvest every year, which attracts people of all ages. And it is so fun. And it's so touching and such great learning. But the other thing that it has is it's built a community. So there's about anywhere from 10 to 15 of us that go there on the weekends during the growing season. We wouldn't even have known each other.
Hmm.
And now, when I got sick, I had Lyme disease. Who were the people that were checking out how am I doing? They were my friends from the orchard. They were the ones who cared you
Right.
know and so it's built a community. And then of course there's the blossoms in the spring, then there's the fruit, and then there's the activity, the pruning, the mulching, the caring, the interaction with nature. you know
Well, and the
it's
education, passing
the
that on to
education.
to another generation or to new
Yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, it's so much. There's so much added benefit just by adding those trees, and I'm curious why. What? So you wanted to plant fruit trees initially, and so why did you choose fruit trees instead of a maple tree or
Because I love food, and because, like you, I am driven by sustainability. Like, to me, sustainability is like, I remember years ago, I used to think that sustainability was like you shouldn't fly in an airplane and you shouldn't run too much hot water. It was all the negative stuff. And I've kind of switched it around inside my head. To me, sustainability isn't about sacrifice. It's about love. It's about caring. It's about community. It's about nurturing. And so, what is one way that I could help myself, my friends, and my community to have all this love, this fun, this joy, and this abundance without having to, like, ship the fruit in from China and eat it and say, hey, this is yummy fruit, and we wouldn't even know each other because we wouldn't be caring for these trees together.
right?
So it's really about the interactivity. If we had planted maple trees and whatever else, you can plant them, water them, and do very little. They don't
Hmm.
need a lot of care. They would make the park lovely, but not as interactive as a fruit tree.
Yeah. Oh, I was just curious. That I just think because I was, thinking about like the education part, like you could do like maple syrup tapping and stuff like
Yeah.
that, which would
Yeah.
be really fun. But
Yeah.
it's such a short time, and it's during the cold season, so people are a little less interested in going out. But that's I think that's wonderful, and the variety. You're going to have all the different flowers and the different smells and the different
Yes.
fruits, and there's something for everybody, which
It's so great. The other thing about fruit trees is obviously they need beneficial insects, they need pollinators. But what they also need is other beneficial insects because pests are a problem with fruit trees. But if you have a wide range of insects, most of them are going to be good. So, in addition to our beautiful fruit trees, we care for a big, gorgeous pollinator garden. And fruit trees need hands-on care, but we wouldn't have to do something every week with the trees. Whereas in the summer and in the growing main part of the growing season, especially in the spring, we'll meet once a week or once every 2 weeks, and we'll clean out the pollinator garden and we'll weed there and take care of it. So it's the balance between having the pollinator garden, which attracts the insects and the pollinators, with blossoms that are through all 4 seasons. So we've got the pollinator that garden that we care for and the fruit trees, and it all works together in a really beautiful, holistic way.
that sounds so nice.
Yeah, it
What do
is.
you have in your pollinator garden?
Oh gosh, we have a lot of native plants. So I love bee balm. Oh my gosh. And we've got echinacea, and we've got, oh gosh, I'm just trying to think. We've got bulbs and daylilies. We got some mahonia, not my favorite. There's some Spirea
Oleia. I've never heard
shrubs.
of that.
Yeah, it kind of looks a little like holly. I don't know why we got it. It's not my favorite. We've got Vernonia. So we've just picked, somewhere we created like a little spreadsheet looking at when things blossom. And we made sure that we had enough blossoming in each season from the bulbs in the early in the season throughout the growing season so that there would always be something there for the beneficial insects to eat and for habitat and all that stuff.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so nice. And I'm just imagining it actually snowed here today.
Oh,
So I'm imagining flowers and
oh,
birds, and bugs.
yeah. We've got the daffodils are just starting to come up, but our weather has been all over the place.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I'm putting my hummingbird feeder out in the next week or so.
Nice.
So very excited about that. Um, I love everything about this, and I would love to see. I wish I could see inside your mind, Susan, because I'm so curious about the spreadsheet. Like I'm not a spreadsheet person, but I love to see like how people's minds work around stuff like that because it's a garden. And I have a friend who does her garden, like her vegetable garden, she does it with rulers and string, so everything is in perfect lines. And I'm just like a throw the seeds in and I'll eventually recognize what the plant is.
Well,
But
it's really funny that you talk about my mind because I am not you are clearly naturally a hands-on gardener. Anybody who can throw things into the ground and give it a try, you take to it naturally. I didn't start gardening until I was in my 30s. I had no idea, and I'm more sort of like an idea person, a writer, concepts. So for me, in order for me to do anything, I need to understand the science. So with fruit trees, when I did my research, I just didn't find a list online saying, do this, do this, do this, do this. Why? Because frankly, online, there's all sorts of resources and they gave me all sorts of different information. You can find on the internet where it says, feed your trees with 10-10-10 fertilizer. And when I was Googling it, I found things like that, which is total rubbish because you don't know what's in your soil.
right, if you don't know what's in your soil, here he comes. The 10-10-10 is not helpful.
Exactly. And in fact, you do want to avoid synthetic fertilizers because you're working together with the microbes in the soil. And those synthetic fertilizers bypass the microbes. They don't get any food out of that deal. So they're not going to hang around. And those microbes are the ones that break down food to feed your tree. So by giving your fruit tree 10-10-10 fertilizers, you're turning your tree into putting it into an addictive cycle where you have to just give it more and more because there's not going to be a lot of microbes in the soil to break down organic matter and feed them. You
Right.
probably also won't have much organic matter because you aren't adding it. So, for me, this whole journey is about learning why we do what we do so that fruit tree care is intuitive. It's just what you do.
Hmm.
And that's how I teach, and that's how I write, and that's how I learn. So the kind of people who enjoy my books are also the kind of people who are sitting there saying, why? Why do I have to mulch my tree with compost? Why does it have to go up to the outer edge of the canopy? Why can't I put it closer to the trunk?
Hmm.
All of these questions. That's the kind of way I think. And I've come to embrace the way my mind works to say, look, you're different. That's okay. There must be other people out there who think like you.
Oh, no, I love that. I think I'm also a why person. Like why, and I've asked that a lot and I've just been told, no, this is just how it's done.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Doesn't
I,
it?
I
I'm
stopped
so
asking.
stubborn.
I stopped asking after a while, but
No.
my mind thinks that. So when I find someone who's like, I need to know why, I'm like, you're my people.
Yeah. Yay.
But I
Excellent.
love to hear how people, I just love to hear and see how people's minds work because I feel like there are a lot of times when I'm not really sure what my mind is doing. But just, I think it's really interesting to see how different people do things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
But this is fascinating. And so there are some things to fruit trees that that do require work, like you were saying. There's like pruning and you know, pruning. Pruning is kind of a tricky thing because you can't do it just any time. I call it giving a haircut, but
Well,
I'm
it
not an
kind of,
arborist.
yeah, it kind of is. And the funny thing is, arborists are not trained in fruit tree care. That's sort of considered like horticulture, not arboriculture. And so a lot of arborists actually do not like dealing with fruit trees because it's a totally different language, it's a totally different approach. As an arborist, I was taught that you really leave your trees alone unless you've got a dead branch, you cut it off. If there's crisscrossing branches, you don't want them rubbing up, damaging each other, you'll remove one and leave the other. Minimal, and maybe you'll prune out disease if you see it, maybe not. Fruit trees are totally different. They are not like they occur in nature naturally as seedlings, but those seedlings don't necessarily produce yummy fruit. And so most fruit trees are grafted. They have a different rootstock and a different fruit wood or, scion. And they're grafted together, so they're like little Franken trees. And they need special care. So when I'm growing a fruit tree, I'm growing it because I want tasty fruit. If I let the fruit tree become a shaggy mess, then there will be a lot of little fruitlets growing hidden inside the canopy that never see the sun, that don't ripen properly, that don't grow to full size. And if you have a tree like that, you might be sitting and saying, wow, I must have got a bummer tree because this fruit doesn't taste very good. Whereas
Is it the
what
same
you're
for all
looking,
fruit?
it's most fruit trees need shaping.
Okay.
The goal when you are shaping the tree, and it starts from the very year you plant your tree, if it's a bare root tree, or the year after if it's a potted tree. But the reason why you want to shape the tree is think about this. Ultimately, you want your fruit tree to have every branch you want to have equal access to sunshine, no shaded branches. So you're creating your tree almost like a sculpture. There's different ways people do it. Like there's that sort of cup shaped. It's called open center, where you have a trunk and it has like anywhere from only 3 to 5 branches on it. Each branch is totally open for air circulation, so diseases don't get stuck in a dark canopy, and sunlight hits every single branch. So a lot of peaches or stone fruits are like that. And then there's the central leader structure. That's a bit of it's a Christmas tree structure, but there's always lots of room between the tiers, the levels of branches. Again, air circulation and sunlight penetration. If you have both of those things, then the tree will stay healthier, will be less likely to get diseased, and the fruit will ripen properly. But to do this is the key, Amy. And this is why arborists sometimes get freaked out when I teach them about fruit tree care. In order to do this, you're going to be removing perfectly healthy branches from your tree from the time that it's a little tiny baby tree, right? So if arborists will see it, and I was teaching in Virginia, I taught a workshop in Virginia, and I had to do the demo in fruit tree pruning before I taught my class. And I'm about to prune the tree, and what's that?
Were they flinching? Like, oh,
no, one person almost pulled me back and told me to stop. And I understand why, because I was about to cut off a perfectly healthy branch emerging from the trunk. And I was showing them that that's part of shaping the tree. So when you're shaping a tree, it's less of a haircut where you're trimming all around, and it's more of the kind of haircut where you're going in and you're actually removing entire sections back to the trunk. I don't know, a hairdresser might call it thinning or something. I don't know what thinning is, but you know what I mean. It's you are really selecting the branches you want to keep and all the rest need to go. And in the early years, you can be pruning up to 50% in the first year, maybe the second year. You can be pruning off about 50% of the upper part of the tree,
Yes.
right? But after that, you are only pruning 25% or less of the canopy. But by then you will have had the shape. You will have created the shape when the tree was young in the first 3 years, and then you're just maintaining that shape afterwards.
Ooh, wow. Yeah, I would totally be flinching. And
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
really interesting. I'm here to teach you, and you're trying to tell me I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, it makes sense. She didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
Probably she then attended the workshop and she's like, oh, that's why she did it. But, arborists are so well trained, especially certified arborists. They know what they're doing. And the reason they don't like fruit trees is it just doesn't, our goals are different. We are trying to grow a harvest and a healthy tree. And again, there are people who say, well, just leave the fruit tree to just do its thing. You could do that. You just won't have a nice harvest and you may have more disease.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would totally be the flincher person, not like you're doing it wrong, but like I want all that fruit.
Well, and that's the thing. You get to make a choice, Amy. So your choice is, do you want a lot of crappy little fruitlets?
Right.
Or do you want less fruit, but really good quality and sweet and delicious?
Right. Yeah. And that's, I mean, like you were saying, you have to, it's a mindset kind of that you have to understand that. And that's new for a lot of people. But so I have a lemon tree. I have a small lemon tree that has never flowered. I have one that flowers I think lemon trees are like every other year.
I don't grow lemon trees. I wish I could, but I don't. Yeah.
Well, it's in a pot. It's in a pot.
That's okay.
I have it inside during the winter and outside during the summer. But I have one that flowers, and I bought it on Amazon because I was desperate. And then I have one that I grew from seed, and it does not flower. And so I'm wondering if you were saying they all need to be like pruned and shaped or grafted to create the fruit. And I'm wondering if maybe that Amazon one was grafted previously.
Interesting.
Because I also have a grapefruit that does not flower.
That's very interesting. My cousin also has a lemon tree that he grew from seed. It doesn't flower, it doesn't fruit. This is so funny because every time he sees me, he's like, can I show you my tree? Now, again, I'm not an expert in citrus. It's different from what I do. But some citrus fruits, or some fruits in general, how, I don't know if this is related. I would have to research it. But do you know how like there's seedless grapes? Mm-hmm. They're bred so that they're not bred to breed.
I mean, maybe it wasn't an organic lemon that I was using. Maybe
it was raised organically, but maybe it was a variety where the seeds are sterile, right. Or it could be lots of things. I mean, hopefully it's a pretty plant and you love it anyways.
Yes.
But I wonder if that's part, and I have never figured out the mystery for my cousin either, but I do find it a coincidence that he has the exact same problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
But my lemon tree from Amazon is flowering like crazy right now.
Yay, lovely. Now, I think you may need to take a little paintbrush and take the pollen from one flower to another just to ensure that you get pollination. Because if it's inside in your house, there's not going to be bees moving around. So you might want to play around with that, see what happens.
Or put it outside.
Yeah, or put it outside as long as there are insects outside right now to do that work.
I saw a bumblebee yesterday.
Oh, good. Excellent.
So what was there was something, so you were saying arborists get freaked out about fruit trees. Does that mean that fruit trees are usually managed by gardeners?
Yeah. So I used to offer online courses. I had a course called Certificate in Fruit Tree Care. There were other courses as well. And I got a lot of gardeners who signed up for the course. And their reason was they wanted to help people take care of their fruit trees successfully. Also, arborists are really expensive. They do big work. And if you raise your fruit trees correctly, they can be small and very manageable. My books are designed so that ordinary people can do this. As long as you like gardening, you can learn how to care for your own fruit tree. It is not rocket science. You just have to understand why you're doing what you do. And I can teach anybody how to prune a tree, how to care for the tree. And I've got a whole bunch of books on those topics.
Gosh, I love that. And so one of the things that that I wanted to make sure to bring up is one of somebody, I can't remember who it was, but somebody said if you're starting a homestead, the first thing you do is plant fruit. Fruit trees, fruit, like blueberries, raspberries, all those things that are going to come back every year, perennial fruit. And so that's an interesting point to know that the fruit trees actually require, some education and some real work, but just, to get them started, because it's going to take a few years for them to really be productive, and then you'll be sufficient sooner. The sooner you get started, the sooner you'll have them.
So I'm really glad you mentioned that, because the most important thing that you do when you're growing fruit trees is carefully choose your trees. So the problem is that people go to the garden center or the big box store and they say, oh, Honeycrisp apple. I like Honeycrisp apples. I'm going to get one of those. Let's get a Bartlett pear, But there is a step-by-step process you need to do in order to choose trees that are, let's start with the obvious thing, right for your plant hardiness zone. So you don't want to get a tree that's going to thrive in a much warmer climate, but not in your climate. You want to make sure you get enough chill hours if you're in a warmer climate. You want to make sure your tree has a pollination partner. So there are a lot of fruit trees, for instance, peaches you can plant one peach tree on its own, and usually it is self-pollinating. But apple trees, you need two of them, and they need to be different varieties. And so early on, one of the first lessons I learned is it's worth it to take a few hours and research the right tree to get the right tree for your location. So just had a little thumbs up appear on my screen. But right, so on my book, Growing Urban Orchards, that's my very first book. I have a few pages about how to choose the right tree. And it's not rocket science. It's just a step-by-step process. And in April, I'm coming out with my newest book, which is called Designing a Fruit Tree Garden, which is really focusing on how to choose fruit trees that thrive in your climate and conditions, but also other interesting thoughts that you might want to consider. Do you want a freestanding tree? Or do you want trees that are closer together like they do in orchards these days? It's called high density. So high density is often like little cider orchards. They don't have to be cider apples, for instance, but they're closer together, easy to harvest. Different skills are involved in pruning. There's less pruning, more training of the branches. So I cover that in my book because if you can get the right trees in the ground, better to wait a year, do your research, and then get them in the ground rather than do what we did in our park, which is like, whoa, let's go to the garden center. Whew, okay, we'll take one of those and two of those, put them in the ground and realize, whoa, they are not suitable for our conditions.
Yeah,
even things like rootstocks, some trees you pick up from the garden center are dwarfing trees. And in a park, if you plant a dwarfing tree, which is a small tree, if some kid hits it with a ball, it's going to get knocked over and it's going to die. Whereas you get the bigger trees, semi-dwarfing trees, and kids can eventually climb them and have fun with them. So there are a few things to think about. And at that first stage is a beautiful time to do it. If you're earlier on in your adventure, take the time to learn about choosing the right tree for your condition, and it will take care of, I would say 40% of any of the problems you could, or more of any of the problems you could have with your trees. Believe it or not, Amy, there are even disease-resistant trees that don't get the common diseases fruit trees get. So apple trees get lots of diseases, but there's apple trees like Liberty and Freedom they don't get them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And those were grafted, I guess.
They're grafted, but for instance, Liberty apple and Freedom apple, and there are many, many different cultivars, They were bred naturally from selection. They're not like, weird stuff with fish genes in it or something, but they're naturally bred where they choose the trees that, in an orchard with fire blight, a big disease. Let's say if fire blight hits an orchard with lots of different cultivars, they'll look to see which trees didn't get fire blight, and then they start to breed those trees until they get one with beautiful tasting fruit that is totally, maybe not totally immune, but it really isn't too bothered by fire blight. So Freedom and Liberty are two very famous apple cultivars that are, they're not vulnerable to apple scab or fire blight or certain other common diseases.
Oh,
And so, if you don't want to deal with diseases, get a disease-resistant tree. So
who
much
wants
easier.
to deal with diseases?
Hmm?
Who wants that?
Nobody wants that. And my perspective is this: like, there are lots of people who are all about heirloom, old varieties, and I'm totally into that too. But for a beginner, if you've got a backyard and you just want one or two trees or three trees, and you just don't want to get into that messy stuff, there is nothing wrong with saying, I'm going to choose some cultivars that are just easier to grow, because I'm not like a geek in that way. I don't really want to learn how to prevent these problems. I don't want to have to deal with any sprays, even if they're organic sprays.
Okay. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they taste good, the Liberty and Freedom? I don't know if I've had them.
Out of all, yeah, that's the problem. And I'm not saying they taste bad. So for instance, Pristine is an early apple. It ripens in the late summer and it's disease resistant. I can't remember which diseases, but it's a really tough tree. And it is one of my favorite apples. Okay, Pristine. Now, there's another disease resistant apple called Red Free. And it's okay. I don't love it. Maybe it's more of a cooking apple. It's just not my favorite. Depends on your taste. Liberty and Freedom, we interestingly have those trees in our park. Our problem with apple trees is park visitors harvest them before they're ripe, so there's nothing that ripens for us, so we haven't really tasted them.
Oh.
We don't know.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, there are so many types of apples. It is
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
And I know there's just like the few typical that everybody loves, and I'm so weird because I don't love those. I'm trying to remember. I heard I think I was listening to a podcast and they were like, oh no, it wasn't. It was Subway Takes on Instagram, and this guy said red delicious apples just need to go away. Like they're not delicious and nobody likes them. And I'm like,
yeah.
I love red delicious apples.
Do you? Oh my God, you're the only person I know.
Exactly. I'm weird like that. I'm not like a take a bite out of a whole apple. I have to cut it up and I love the peels and whatever, but like peanut butter or something like that, because a lot of them they're too crisp, too sweet. My mouth is weird, but
no, another thing that I love to do that I've learned to do over the years is I do apple tastings whenever I get a chance.
Well, that's really fun.
Yeah, totally fun. And here's what's fun is, because I have a podcast, I have invited guests on my show that are experts at tasting apples, so that I've learned those skills as to how to taste an apple and find the different flavors. So often if I am at a farmer's market and there's some interesting apples, I'll buy 3 different ones, bring them home, and I'm like you, I don't bite into apples. I slice them up, sit down, and I thoughtfully compare side by side, tasting them. And what are the flavors I get? What's the texture? What's the juiciness level? And I have had so much fun finding my favorites. I surprise myself sometimes as to which I choose. There was one of the favorites that we got from an organic orchard in Ontario where he grows 600 different cultivars of apples. And we managed to get some for our group to try. One of the cultivars is called Hornberger Pancake.
What?
It's a German apple, I guess, from a town called Hornberger. And I think the original name was Hornberger Pfannkuchen or something. I don't clearly I don't speak German. So, but one of the people in the group called it hamburger pancake. So it was a green apple, and we tasted it beside other heirloom apples, and I loved it.
Oh,
It was not sweet, sweet, but it had some interesting flavors. It was to me a perfectly balanced apple. So, yeah, for me, the supermarket apples, the reason that they're in the supermarket is because they're hard, they last a long time, and they're easy to ship. They are not in there because they necessarily taste good. Even the Honeycrisp apple can be hit and miss depending on where you grow it,
mm.
what the soil is like, what the climate is like. So you're paying a lot for Honeycrisp, which I also do enjoy. But it's sometimes I get it and I'm like, oh, this was not worth what I paid for it.
Well, I mean, does it depends on what's nearby, right? Because of the pollination, or
Soil
no?
makes a difference,
Yeah.
climate makes a difference, the hours of sun, the year from one year to another, the
Oh my
flavor can
goodness.
change. But here's one thing that I find interesting. I went this year to two big apple tastings this past year. And one was in an orchard where they do holistic sprays. I talk about them in my book, Grow Fruit Trees Fast. So they do these holistic, easy sprays that really help nutritionally the apples, and they are very, very sort of organic in their approach and holistic. The other orchard is mm, not primarily, that's not what they do. And so the flavors at the holistic orchard were so good. For all the different types of apples, you could really taste the flavor difference. At the other orchard, though, they all tasted the same to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if the flavor comes from the microbes in the soil, because at orchard number one, they're really working on feeding the microbe population so that the microbes can feed the trees. In orchard number two, they need to raise the trees for other reasons. And so it was
The
interesting.
fruit is like a byproduct, not necessarily.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting. Goodness. Uh, and so I'd love to go back a little bit. This is just is so fascinating. But so I know that you have a very varied past. And
Yes.
so I'm really curious. So you started, well, you were saying like 30 years ago or so, you were a journalist, and you did some traveling, and then I'm
Yeah.
curious how you got started with gardening. And
So I always wanted to be a journalist from when I was a teenager, and went to university. I ended up studying Russian studies, and I ended up living in the United Kingdom. And in the United Kingdom, I found work as a journalist, a broadcaster, and all sorts of stuff
for
uh,
BBC,
for the BBC
I
World
happened to
Service,
find a
but
job
doing
in
Russian,
journalism.
yeah, Russian language radio programs. So that was the thing I loved to do. And communication, writing, I love to do all those things. When I came back to Canada, I was still a journalist. I worked as a filmmaker for a while, but the world had changed and companies didn't want to hire full time people. It was usually contract work. And things just dried up for me. So my husband is from Trinidad, and he taught, I learned to garden from him. And I became very interested in trees. And then this job came up as a gardener for the city of Toronto, and I didn't have other work. So I'm like, okay, I'll do it. It was seasonal work. And I learned so much about gardening and became very passionate. So, as part of that, I decided to sign up for a course in landscape design, learned about trees, fell in love with trees, and I learned nothing about fruit trees. But then I was like, oh, fruit trees. Trees are great, but fruit trees are even better because you can
Two
eat the
in one.
stuff. It's two in one, right? Yeah, you can eat the stuff. So, and then I ended up starting a community orchard in my neighborhood as part of that whole adventure. And the learning curve was huge. I made lots of mistakes, and that gave me fodder to write again, to write about, but this time, instead of writing about international relations or social issues, I was writing more about fruit trees and how to grow them for goofy people like me who have no horticultural background, you
Or who
know.
just love all the information.
Yes, or who just love, who are motivated by curiosity and passion and interest. Yeah.
Okay. And through this, you started a podcast as well.
Yes.
And how many books do you have?
So I've got 4 books on fruit tree care, and the 5th one is coming out in April or maybe May. So yeah, and these books are based on the courses that I used to sell, the online courses. When I sold the courses, it was fantastic because I met people from across North America and around the world. And we used to have like a meetup where me and the students would meet. They could ask their questions. They could show me their pictures. So I learned about growing in all of these different environments so that I could then synthesize the information and learn what I needed to learn. But that's where the podcast was so beautiful because here I am, I'm getting great questions from my students. I can teach them what I know. But if ever I was lost and confused, I had a monthly podcast. I'd find an expert, interview the expert, ask them why. Tell me what's going on here and why. And in the end, because of my broadcasting background, they were great shows, but it was the people. It was because these people were the top experts in their field. I'll tell you something. If I didn't have that podcast and I called these people and said, hey, I don't understand this. Could you just take some time and tell me? They'd be like, lady, I'm busy.
Go to your garden center.
Yeah, exactly. Go talk to your local master gardeners who, by the way,
Right.
don't know the answer. But because I had a podcast, because it became, I don't know, well known in its own way,
Right.
I could talk to anybody I wanted to talk to. And I met such wonderful people through that process.
So cool. So cool. Oh my goodness. I feel like I could talk to you for a long time because I gained an appreciation. I was married to an arborist for many years.
Yes.
So I couldn't tell you, I could tell you a pine tree and a maple tree, but now I know beech and I know birch and I know poplar and, so I learned some stuff in my years, but fruit trees was not something that we had. We killed a lot of fruit trees.
Yeah. And you're not alone. I've killed a lot of fruit trees. We have replaced it from the original, 18 trees. At least half of them have been replaced.
Yeah.
When they're too sick, you can't leave them there. If it's through the entire system, if you see ooze and goop coming out of every branch and the trunk of the tree, whatever the pathogen is, it's in the whole tree and it will continue to spread to your fruit trees, your neighbor's fruit trees. You need to remove them and it's heartbreaking.
Oh my goodness.
So you're not the only one, and it is actually very responsible when a tree is very sick. But there are lots of situations where if you can recognize what's wrong with it, you can deal with it right away and it doesn't get to that stage.
Right. I mean, our house had so many trees and just like, so many fruit trees, apple trees, a plum tree. There were 2 plum trees. Oh my gosh. They were the most amazing plums and a few pear trees, but like one by one, they all died off.
Oh,
It was very sad.
yeah. And it's
because
common.
I was an arborist, we didn't know. And it was not something that I don't know. Like I was
Sometimes,
passionate about
Amy,
it enough.
people don't even realize that there's something to learn, right? And that's the thing. People jump and say, well, it must be me. I guess I don't have a green thumb. And if you think about it this way, think about people who have organic orchards with, thousands of trees. If it was such an easy thing, because organic fruit is expensive, why wouldn't anybody that has some money buy a piece of land, stick 10,000 trees in the ground, and just sit back and make tons of money? It doesn't happen because it's not that it's not an easy process, it's a specialized system.
Mm-hmm.
And you just need to learn some stuff, right? Fruit trees are a handful, and a lot of people have bad experiences. I've figured out that they don't have to. So my original quest with my very first book is, what is the minimum I need to know in order to grow fruit trees, healthy and productive fruit trees? The minimum. Just tell me the minimum. This is not my full-time job.
Right.
That was my first quest. And from there, I learned more and more and just became more interested.
Right. And so I just want to come back to just where you were saying that, what's the minimum that we have to do? You said the one thing, if people don't remember anything else, like what do you want people to remember?
This one sentence, okay, this one sentence, this was my quest when I started educating all those years ago. If you can just remember this, fruit trees need hands-on care.
There we
Just
have it.
remember that. And
Yeah.
then you will know to look up what is that care. And I can tell you in a nutshell what it is, right? Essentially, choosing the right tree is great if you are starting your journey. That is so important. A lot of people didn't do that in the beginning, so it might be a little bit more of a struggle. Doesn't mean you lost out. The next thing you need to do is you need to feed that tree every year. And the answer is so easy, and it's organic matter. If you can put 2 inches of compost around the roots of the tree, not touching the trunk at all. So leave a few inches around the trunk that's
We're not
bare
touching the
soil.
trunk.
Because if it touches the trunk, it can rot the wood. So you want some bare soil there, okay? So take that 2 inches of compost, it can be, or, your home compost, it can be purchased compost, that's fine. But the trick is to make sure that that mulch circle goes out right to the edge of the canopy. And the reason is the feeder roots of the tree, the ones that take in nutrition and water, are at the edge of the canopy. They're not close to the trunk. So those feeder roots are tiny little roots. They're not the woody ones that if you dig into the soil, you'll find. Those ones store nutrition, but they can't take in new nutrition.
Got it.
So in our park, we have mulch circles that are pretty huge, but I want to make sure those trees get food because any of us, if we are not nourished on a regular basis, will get sick.
Mhm.
Anybody, any animal, any human, whatever. So that's number 2. Choose the right tree. Number 2 is feed it correctly. Number 3 is prune it annually. And that also has to do with nourishment. So if you're feeding your tree and it has to push that energy into 100 branches, there's only a little bit of energy for each branch. If you are correctly pruning your tree and you're removing some of those branches, each remaining branch has more of that energy to enjoy, and it can grow longer, grow stronger, and produce better quality fruit. And we also talked about how pruning opens the tree up to sunlight so the fruit will ripen properly, and air circulation helps to prevent fungal diseases from settling into the canopy. So, yeah, choosing the right tree, feeding it correctly, pruning it annually, making sure there's no competing plants nearby that are competing for water and nutrition, especially when the tree is young. But if you can only do those things, you're rocking it. There's more to learn, but those things are amazing.
That's great. That's so
Yeah.
helpful to know. And I
Yeah.
mean, if you want to get, all really in depth, like you can grow a pollinator garden.
Definitely. And a lot of people with home, if they're growing 1 or 2 fruit trees in the backyard, they may already have a lovely garden. So enhance it by making sure you have blossoms that are available throughout the growing season. So if you find in your garden that you've got lots of blossoming flowers in July, but nothing in June and nothing in August and September, have a look and try and add some stuff. And those beneficial insects that you attract will help you both pollinate your trees and protect them.
Love that. Are there like companion plants that are good for trees?
I know that a lot of, yeah, so people talk about planting onions around fruit trees to deter insects, like the insect pests. So, like things like perennial chives and things like that. We don't do that. We don't rely on that. It could be that it works. I've written about it in a small way, but I don't see enough evidence that really proves it to me. So I'm just focusing on the science that I can prove, right?
Right.
And so that it doesn't mean it doesn't work though.
Okay. I was just curious about like, adding natural like cover crops or
Cover crops are totally different. Yeah, cover crops are amazing.
to like add to the
So
soil itself.
yeah, cover crops are amazing for lots of reasons. In fact, on my upcoming radio show or the radio show for March, we are talking about cover crops and how to choose a cover crop. It's a bit of a matchmaking thing because you need the right crop for your soil, for your needs. But I'm speaking to an expert from Idaho who is establishing a new community orchard there, and she's exploring cover crops because she wants to improve the soil. So that can be good, but they have to be very carefully chosen.
Well, especially in Idaho, I would assume. Wow, that's so fascinating. Okay, so this is wonderful. I love, because I was told, fruit tree. I'm planning a move myself, hopefully sooner than later. And so I want it to be somewhat of a homestead. And so, I was like, ooh, I should plant fruit trees first. And so I wanted to make sure to point that out and, get your thoughts on that, which it sounds like research first.
Yes.
Make sure
yes.
you know what you're planting, and then, then maybe do that first. But so I just want to, I want to set it up for success. I would love to do like a pick your own type of thing. Like, if I've got enough space, like have people come and pick their own, and I was thinking also, like, do you guys do like a cider press in the fall, that type of thing?
We don't, because like I said, the apples are all gone by harvest time.
That's right.
And our orchard is very small, but we have a group in Toronto called Not Far From the Tree, and they harvest homeowners' trees. Then this fruit would have gone to waste. They do the cider press stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. And from just like random fruits.
Yeah, random.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
There was a guy in Maine where I lived who was collecting those apples, like donated apples, and he would make like a wine or a hard cider or something like that.
Yeah, hard cider. Yeah,
and then he would deliver a bit of it to everyone that donated, which was fun.
Fantastic.
So this is so helpful, Susan. I appreciate your expertise and your time so much. What does the word sustainability mean to you? I know you said that you had like an idea in the past. Oh, because you do it with like a happy, a loving tone instead of like, don't do this, don't do this.
Yeah, so sustainability for me is a way for us to make our world healthier, and to allow us to live healthier, more productive lives. But it also there's a joyfulness to it. And it has to do with the joy of connecting and with nature and working with nature and working with each other. So my experience with the community orchard is doing this in community, growing fruit trees in community. And that was the perfect way. It's all about what is possible for this world and how we can make it better. And I don't think there's anything negative about that.
Right. Well, and you totally built that by just putting in the trees, right? I mean, because you said nobody was going to the park, and so now you have people helping to take care of the trees, people walking through to have the fruit, and you've got people working with you and walking through, and I'm sure just like kids playing and climbing trees and stuff like that. Like that's just dang, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so, what's the best way for people to find you and learn more? Maybe
Well,
find
thank
your
you.
books or your
They can go,
podcast or-
yeah, they can go check me out at orchardpeople.com. So orchardpeople.com, and you can read articles about fruit tree care. You can find my books on the books page. You can find my podcast and listen to some of the amazing experts that I've been lucky enough to talk to. And and I hope you guys learn a lot and enjoy it. And thank you so much, Amy, for having me on your show.
Gosh, this is so fun. Thank you. I appreciate that a lot.